Parasha Meditation, Parashat BeHar. It's really an amazing privilege that we have now to live in the land of Israel, to have returned after, 1,800 something years. And we could finally actually keep some of the laws of the land that's described in this week's Parasha, Parashat BeHar. Just like it says, more than Israel has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept Israel. We could say the same, and even in greater ways, more than the land of Israel has kept the sabbatical year, which is the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year has kept the land of Israel. And it's really interesting if you notice that every time that we either gained land or lost land, it always happened that the year following Shemitah year, for example, the victory of the 6-Day War, when we recaptured Yerushalayim and also Gush Etzion, where we live here, that took place in year 5727, following the Shemitah year, which was the previous year in 5726. So keeping the laws of the Shemitah makes us worthy to continue holding on to the land of Israel. Through keeping the mitzvot of Shemitah, we strengthen our faith and our trust in Hashem, and we also become united with one another. And that's similar to when we received the Torah on Mount Sinai in unison. So it's not by chance that we often read Parashat BeHar in somehow close proximity to the festival of Shavuot. So let's look a little bit about how Shemitah, the sabbatical year, it helps instill emunah in us, faith. You know, if you live outside of the land of Israel, it may be a bit difficult for you to relate to the laws of Shemitah, because the main thing that you have to worry about is that the fruits and the vegetables that you buy from the land of Israel have a proper kashrut, kosher certification, so that they're not harvested or they're not used grown in a forbidden way during Shemitah year. But those of us who live on the land, we're fortunate enough to get a taste of the emunah that really the Shemitah year entails. So it's really a lot of emunah that it takes to be willing to take a whole year off working, because essentially Israel is a gregarian society, and essentially, we're farmers. So one thing is that already is emunah to take one day a week off and not work on Shabbat. But think about like how much greater emunah we need to take off a whole entire year, not just one weekly day, but a whole entire year where we don't work the land at all, and we trust in Hashem that somehow He's going to provide for us. Another thing that's really important about Shemitah, it teaches us to relinquish the ownership of the land of Israel. It teaches us that the land really never belonged to us. Who does it belong to? Only Hashem. And that's why it says, then the land shall keep a Shabbat to Hashem. We, the Jewish people, we're not in the center here. It's rather land has a will of its own and has its own connection to Hashem. Even if I were to weed all the thorns, work myself to the craziest sweat, turning the earth, add compost, plant delicious grapes, as soon as the Shemitah years arrive, my hands are tied. I'm reminded how everything belongs to Hashem. For the land is mine, says Hashem, and you're strangers and settlers with me. That is in this week's Parasha, chapter 25, verse 23 of Vayikra. So I want to share with you just my own my first Shemitah experience, that really brought home like the concept for the land is mine, says Hashem. One Thursday afternoon, I'm looking out of the window, doing my first Shemitah year on the land here in Bat Ayin, and I discovered, to my great dismay, that my neighbor was helping himself to the most succulent of grapes in my garden. I planned to pick those grapes the next day and serve them fresh for my family and guests on Shabbat. My first instinct was to stop him and explain, "Hey, what are you doing? Those are my grapes." And then the deeper realization of Shemitah kicked in. Really? Whose grapes are they truthfully? Whose land is it after all? It took some processing before I realized that all my hard work in my garden was meant not just for myself and my family, but for Hashem. He gives the land of Israel to all of the Jewish people to share and live in unison and harmony upon it. As it states, the produce of the land during the Shabbat shall be food for all of you, for your servant, for your maidservant, for your hired laborer, and for the stranger that lives with you, that is the convert. The connection between Shemitah and Mount Sinai. The parasha starts with these are the mentioning the laws of the land, and then it says that they were spoken to Moshe on Mount Sinai. So Rashi asks, what do you mean? Aren't all the mitzvot spoken to Moshe at Har Sinai? But it doesn't mention with all the mitzvot they were given to Moshe at Har Sinai. So why is it only written in conjunction with the Shemitah laws? So that's a hard question to answer. So the Torah does not separate between religion and social relationships of daily living. That's why the Shemitah is connected with receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. It is explicitly through the laws of Shemitah that we implement the great general principles of Torah into the details of our lives. And additionally, the laws of Shemitah, they bring unity to the Jewish people, which is like what makes us worthy to receive the Torah on Sinai, like it's said in conjunction with receiving the Torah. It says, "And V'chan Sham Yisrael," in a singular language, Israel encamped in singular on the mountain. And Rashi says, "Ke'ish echad belev echad," like one person with one heart. And that, and the Israelites then also declared that ultimate declaration of faith when they said, "We will do and we will hear." In the same vein, keeping the laws of Shemitah also requires sublime faith, believing firmly that Hashem will take care of all our needs, even when we abstain from work, in order to keep Hashem's mitzvot. It is not my power and might and the might of my hand that gives me all this wealth. It's all everything, what happens to me, how much money I have, how much land I have, how much produce I have, how much blessings I have. It's all in Hashem's hands. So it also talks about, it mentions the laws of Shemitah, Parashat BeHar discusses the Jubilee year, the Yovel, which takes place every 50th year after 7 cycles of Shemitah. That's when we have to proclaim liberty to the land by blowing a shofar, the same shofar that vibrated at the revelation of Sinai. And during this Jubilee year, all the slaves go free and every person returns to his original land and family. And in this way, by refraining from selling the land or from selling ourselves as perpetual slaves, we experience how both we and the land belong to no other than Hashem. So Shemitah and Yovel teach us to return to our essential selves and let go equally of our attachments to ownership and to being enslaved by others. So now it's the time for the actual meditation. So make yourself comfortable in your space. Relax and allow yourself to let yourself go completely. breathe slowly and relax even more. Visualize an imaginary shofar of freedom and prepare yourself to blow it. Inhale and envision yourself blowing the shofar on the exhalation. The sound of this shofar will allow you to relinquish ownership to everything that is not part of your essential being. Keep blowing your imaginary shofar of freedom several times and let it call you back to your essential self. Crown Hashem King over your garden and home with each shofar blast. Inhale while imagining your garden, if applicable. Exhale, blowing your imaginary shofar into your garden if you have one. Now inhale while envisioning your home. And then blow your shofar into your home, relinquishing attachment to all of your possessions. Repeat this sequence of breathing, blowing the shofar, and crowning Hashem over the particular possessions of your choice as many times as you would like. Now turn your attention to your body. Blow the shofar of freedom into your forehead, crowning Hashem there. Let the sounds of your shofar crown Hashem over your eyes, nose, ears, mouth, cheeks, and the back of your head, neck, and shoulders. Make Hashem King over your arms and hands as you blow the breath of life into each of them. Crown Hashem over your lungs, heart, and diaphragm, allowing the shofar to cleanse away any blockages you may be holding there. Continue crowning Hashem while blowing your shofar into your small intestine, belly, and colon, purifying them and making Hashem King over them. Blow the shofar into your liver, spleen, and kidneys while crowning Hashem. Finally, bring the liberating sound of the shofar into your thighs, knees, calves, and feet, making Hashem King over your entire being and over everything that you own. Keep breathing and enjoy your new freedom from attachments as you return to your essential self. So really, Shemitah comes to heal the land and give us all a taste of the Garden of Eden, where there were no ownership at first, there were no possessions. So that's what happens on the Shemitah year, on the sabbatical year. All the fruits of the trees become ownerless, belonging equally to everyone. Adam and Chava, they messed up when they seized ownership of the land in the Garden of Eden. They did not keep the law of the land. They only had one law of the land. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you must not eat of it. And still, they did not listen. And so the land was cursed because of them. And they had to work hard to, especially Adam was told, in the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread until you return to the ground. So in order to make the land yield its produce, humanity now had to give itself over to hard labor. So we're no longer living in paradise, receiving our sustenance directly from Hashem's open hand, but still, every Shemitah year, and it's going to be Shemitah year next year, like this Rosh Hashanah, the land gradually heals as we learn that we're neither enslaved to working the land, nor are we its owner or master. Shemitah teaches us that we're just custodians who enjoy the privilege to dwell in Hashem's holy land. Okay.